Welcome back. You are with RCR. Of course, it's Media Matters time again this week, but it's not my brother from another mother. It's my sister from another mister, Rachel. How are you, Rachel Stewart? I'm really good. I'm really good. Maree couldn't join us this week, but that's okay because there's plenty to talk about. And Rachel, you're more than happy to chat about it with me. We caught up with Fourth Estate last week, and in a way, it's kind of good because there's so much going on. We can almost extend that conversation into today. And let's just dive right into it. David Seymour on the tiles, as we record as of yesterday, declared Annie O'Brien Day. New public holiday, one thinks. Both you and I read Annie O'Brien's Thought Crime Substack at the same time. I sent you a text, said, "Oh, have you clocked this?" And you're like, "Sure have." Why don't you introduce what Annie was talking about, and then we'll have a little bit of a dive into it, shall we?
Well, yeah, introduce what she was talking about. Well, it's been an open secret for a while. Not that I'd heard it, but in Parliament that Mikey Sherman has been off the rails for a while, and she's certainly off the rails at the moment. And she was in Nicola Willis's office for a debrief after the budget. I think they were having drinks.
Very
Yeah,
dinky dinks by the sound.
a few little tipples were had, and I think Mikey quite likes a tipple. And she came straight in and started attacking Lloyd Burr about stealing her effing stories. And you faggot. Can I say that? Oh, I've said it.
Yes, you've said it. There you go.
I've said it. Well, that's what she said. Nicola Willis heard the end of this conversation and brought the whole thing to a close and didn't want anything to do with it. Thought it was horrible, which is the right thing to do and very professional, and kicked them all out. Which is, the problem with having vipers in your nest, like journalists. When you're a politician, these things, they can tip into. I mean, it's always been a hard drinking atmosphere, but anyway, it was covered up. It's been an open secret for a year that this happened. And Annie O'Brien decided to out it, and she did a very good job. As she's on fire, man. She's doing so well.
Yeah, she is definitely. And one of the things with this is the fact that it's taken 11 months to come out. I mean, I'm sure that she's had wind of this for a really long time, and there was obviously zero desire from TV3 or TVNZ. From what I heard, Willis had approached Lloyd Burr. He's like, "Look, I don't want to take this any further," which, full kudos on Lloyd, being the aggrieved party in this. That shows, what a bigger man he's been about it. But it's the fact that there would have been other people in that room. NZME reporters would have been in there. RNZ would have been in there. Now, I did hear, but Seymour did allude to the fact that there may have been sort of legal letters flying around to keep a lid on this. Yes. My question is trust. Here we are with the media with tanking trust. We talked about it on Fourth Estate. This does not do their cause any good whatsoever, does it?
No. There's one rule for politicians, and there should be, because, I mean, they are to be held to a higher account, I believe, than anybody, probably, but they're not. Well, they are and they're not, but some of their personal conduct shocks me. But, yeah, these journalists have covered for each other. NZME, by all accounts, it's not proven, but sounds pretty kosher to me, sent letters to TVNZ, or TVNZ sent letters to NZME telling them to keep quiet about it. Apparently, I haven't seen them, don't know, but I'm sure Annie's on it. So what is this saying? It's saying that the public don't deserve to have a media that's transparent, that there's one rule for them, and we know there is, and another rule for everybody else. They'd be all over this if it was the other way around, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, she made a very good case. Yeah, and I found it interesting too that she said, "I don't want to be the black hole of news," because she said anything that comes out of my mouth, and I found this too when I got cancelled, and she and I have been through all that, that when you break a story, they don't want to know because it came from you. So it's hanging. We've still got that cancel culture, and we've still got hanging the messenger, haven't we? If we don't like the messenger, we won't do the business. But anyway, they started attacking her yesterday in amongst reporting her Substack about it, but they also are trying to insinuate that she's in with the National Party and what's she doing in Washington, D.C., and there's all that stuff going on.
She's probably one of the sharpest voices in the independent space that we've got right now. And again,
I'd say the sharpest, actually.
Yeah, she's incredible. And I think there are lessons to be learned. Like when you look at Mikey's, since she got that job, which has been 12, 18 months she's had that senior political editor's job. Her conduct, you have the over hyperbolic reportage on a poll that comes in. I mean, the polls. I know that they're easy fodder for them, but every single one seems to be catastrophized within an absolute inch of a government's going to turn over or a leadership coup's going to happen or what have you, and nothing ever happens. And I think listeners get really tired of that. And even the aggressive door stopping that she does, all of these things. Now, I know she has a job to do, but there's a fine line between OTT and professionalism. And I wonder what someone like Barry Soper, who's just put his book out, who's just retired, I mean, what someone like him as a 40-year veteran of the press gallery would say to these new ones coming through like Mikey Sherman. If she was called in for a sit-down coffee with Barry and he was going, now look here, Mikey, I've got a bit of advice, what do you think he would say to someone like her?
Well, I'm pretty sure I know what he'd say, but I'm also pretty sure that she wouldn't listen. And he would say, look, there's ways of doing things. And Barry was a tough operator, and we all know that, but he was fair. And there's new breeds coming through, new generations of journalists coming through, and it appears to me that the heaviest boozers amongst them, and here I would put Duncan Garner in that category. Back in the day, I would. Mikey Sherman seems to be having a problem of some sort with alcohol. Barry has certainly been known to be on the. I think it's a high pressure atmosphere in Parliament, and I think his book is very revealing. And he would just talk about the rules. There are rules in Parliament, and but this is the way all of society's going, not just journalism. People talk to each other like they're just hunks of garbage now. And we've really, it's okay to be competitive, but it's not okay to call people faggots. It's not okay to abuse people. It's not okay to smack them in the hallway or whatever the thing is. I mean, politicians do it. So I guess he would talk to them about standards. But yeah, when are they coming back, Maree? I don't know.
No, and we've seen that in New Zealand politics. It's interesting you can say about, standards and where things are at. I've just said to you before we got started, I interviewed Pete Boghossian, which will be out by the time that this comes out. And he's out here at the moment. He's a former philosophy professor, public intellectual now. He's out here in New Zealand for a significant time, couple of months, halfway through his tour. And he's doing a lot of work around teaching young people to have challenging conversations, emphasis on conversation.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that.
He was actually quite hopeful with what he'd seen so far, but he's starting in New Zealand, yeah. But he also said to me off the record that he's wanting to have more conversations with people from different political spectrums and ideologies, but they just simply don't want to engage. And that is always a challenge.
Well, people on the left don't tend to want to engage, or the new left, or whatever you want to call this incarnation, but certainly the more conservative youth are more than happy to. But, they're quite hard to find at times. But yeah, the new mantra is, I'm not going to dignify your feelings about gender, climate change, trannies, any of those things. I'm not going to dignify them with even talking to you or answering you. And that's a problem. That's a big problem.
So those echo chambers, and I mean, let's face it, everybody, regardless of where you sit on a spectrum, right, left, nationalist, globalist, it doesn't matter where it is, you have that siloing. Now, the dangers of that siloing is that you can get indoctrinated of whatever it is, and then also any sense of reality can disappear. And I think that played out over the weekend in the United States with yet another attempt outside of, ironically, the press, the Washington press gala that was
White
being
House
held.
Dinner,
White House Press Association or press
something.
dinner.
They do it every year anyway.
Yeah, and it's the first time that the president has attended for a while. I just there's lots of chatter about, is this a false flag? Did it happen? Is this all of these different things? when I look at this young man, I just see that here is probably a young guy that has fallen into a vortex of really bad information. His sense of reality is just been completely warped, and he's gone in and done this very extreme thing. I am so grateful that no one has died. The one thing I have found quite funny, and it also harks back to the drinking culture of, reporters, particularly around politics, was my favourite post out of all of it was the caterer, the guy, the organiser, the event organiser, who put up a post talking about his great dismay that all of this has gone on, how difficult it was. It's broken up the dinner right sort of towards the beginning. It's all been cancelled. And what were the media worried about? Well, let's put it this way: 188 bottles of very premium wine was laid out on the table, but only 47 were retrieved, and plenty of video footage was shown of good old media booze hags, some of them quite well known, walking out openly with bottles and bags, and they didn't even blink an eye at what went on.
Wow, I didn't know that. I think that young man, if you are told that someone's Hitler long enough, you think you're entitled to kill them because they might really be Hitler. I think this is what's happened on the left. You call people all these names. The right does it too, but this is another dimension. And if you say that he's the evil incarnate, then somebody's going to tip something in their head. It's going to spill over, and they're going to do what he did. He looked like he was a teacher, I think, in California.
Mm-hmm.
Well, California means he's totally probably indoctrinated in the left culture. But yeah, you listen to that stuff long enough. I mean, I've had to pull back over the years from watching my social. I mean, I'm hardly on there these days anywhere as much, and it's so much healthier. When I suddenly discovered the trans stuff and my politics started changing, and I saw the TDS of everybody Trump derangement syndrome, I became quite enamored with all of that and started watching all the podcasters and the Megan Kellys and not saying they're bad or anything, but it does do something to your head. It's good to keep informed, but when you start really going down that path, it's an echo chamber. And what amazed me is that Stuff straight away yesterday had an article written straight faced, not by one of their reporters, it was somebody out of America, saying that this looks staged and, really just putting it out there. It was so quick to look like Trump needed it because he's falling in the polls because of Iran, and, he needed to get more secure. He wants more security, and he wants it was just incredible to me. You could see what happened. It's all in real time. I was particularly distressed to see Erica Kirk leave, and how distressed she was. Because, I mean, Charlie, her husband, we all know about that. But again, we've got the Candace Owens saying it's all, she criticised her dress or something, for wearing that dress. That woman can't go anywhere without being criticised. So it's a strange world out there right now.
Yeah, it is a strange world. It is a very, very strange world. It's not all bad though. Like, I have to admit, I'm like you. I have to monitor my consumption of social media and even mainstream media, because the weight of it can be too much. One of the things, there's actually been two people that have been stood out for me lately, staff reporters from the Herald, that I have to admit, whenever I read their stuff, I'm like, this is what I want. And one is Shane Curry, first and foremost. He was the first to jump on the Annie O'Brien. And I get the feeling Shane has been wanting to report the story that we led off with in Parliament for a long, long time and hasn't been able to. So Annie opened the door for him, and Shane was off to the races. So good on you for that, Shane Curry. So he was there. His story there was great. But also Derek Cheng. We talked about Derek in the Fourth Estate. Marty and I are often handing out wee bouquets to Derek. And part of it is because he's given the mandate in the Herald to do these long-form review articles. So they are wordy. His numeracy is generally spot on. He can understand and read a study pretty well. Now, I'm not saying I fully agree, and I believe that he gets everything absolutely correct and stuff that he does. But for the most part, he puts out the information just as the information. I really don't know how Derek feels about a lot of these things, and which is good because I don't really care. I just want to have that information and be able to take from it what I can. And since we last spoke at Fourth Estate, he published another another article over the weekend questioning why Ashley Bloomfield, after his previous shown, Chris Hipkins said that the information in regards to the vaccine harms for 12 to 17-year-olds was received by Sir Ashley as early as October of 21. Why didn't he pull the vaccine mandate that was available at the time? And he just sort of went through a number of thoughts of why he thought that may be. The one thing I think he touched on, which is actually the genuine reason for it, is that all this money had been poured into a huge summer campaign. Who can forget the 2 shots for summer? A huge summer campaign, a massive effort had gone into to prove that these shots were safe and effective. And then all of a sudden, you've actually got very strong advice saying, actually, not for everybody, they are safe and effective. There are actually some risks here, but you can't let the truth, as they say, get in the way of a good story. What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, well, look, he's Derek Chen. I've never met Derek Chen. He was there when I was writing for the Herald, but I never met him, never had anything to do with him. Always admired his steady pace.
Yeah.
He's got a different feel. His long form is brilliant. This one here called the Ashley Bloomfield what is it called? What's the title? The Ashley Bloomfield COVID vaccine mystery. Why didn't he change mandates for 12 to 17-year-olds? Why won't he say? Well, what a great headline. So he's given free rein because he's earned it. And I would say that he is quite egoless. Well, let me put it this way. He might have an ego for just being a bloody good journalist, and I want to be known for my factual, not trying to prove my virtue stuff. He's a good writer. He's a good researcher. He just asks sensible questions. It may have something to do with his Asian background. He's obviously Chinese extraction. I don't know. That's me making a throwaway line, but there is a predilection there for accuracy and just getting on with the job and working hard. I really admire what he's doing. He's the new kid off the, he's the new cab off the rank for me, and he'd be the best journalist in there, in my opinion, because you just don't know his politics and you don't care.
No, and this is what I love. This is what I absolutely love. In his article, as I said, dropped over the weekend, I think probably dropped on Sunday, the sweet spot between restrictions and protections, and he's talking about the CV tag advice says that 1 dose for under 18s provided individual protection from infection, which itself led to more frequently to cases of heart inflammation than the vaccine. A 2nd dose may add unnecessary risk of increasing the likelihood of myocarditis or pericarditis, particularly in young male. Now, it doesn't mean that 2 doses were a bad idea, he says. The CV tag had already said in August of 2021 that those 12 and older should be eligible for 2 doses following the provisional approval from MedSafe. Now, we all know how flawed that provisional approval actually was. They had 57 conditions attached to that provisional approval, and none of that seemed to have come back. But it was given the possibility of elevated risk from the 2nd dose. The group was advising against the 2-dose vaccine requirement for anyone under 18. Now, of course, what then happened is it wasn't removed. And what you had with the 2 shots for summer campaign, and I really at the time just thought that was so pernicious, because it was that whole carrot and stick scenario. They were dangling if you want your summers back to normal, the festivals will be on. If you want to do all the things that you've missed out on last summer, you can do it this year. It's going to happen, but you need to have your 2 shots for summer. So they dangled that carrot. These kids went out and got jabbed with the hope of attending all of these events, and almost all of them were universally cancelled. Which is cruel. And then you follow it up with once the kids get back to school, particularly those most senior kids, but once the kids get back to school, it is still in place, and you have an entire term where you've got particularly those who are really involved in outside of school activities, or even in school activities, very heavily involved in sport, turned around and told, oh no, if you don't have a vaccine pass, you can't participate. So if you were a student elite athlete at that point, the ones most at risk for myopericarditis, if you wanted to stay competing, you were forced onto that needle in order to have consistency and continuity. That, for me, stinks.
Yeah, and Derek Cheng doesn't really go into that level of. Well, that's the thing. You wouldn't find one line in his on that one from the 26th we're talking about, where you feel that he's strayed into his own anything. Imagine if every reporter, every journalist in New Zealand acted like that, and we could work it out ourselves from what the people who didn't get shots like me and you had to work it out because we were trying to read between the lines, and we worked it out in our own time and decided not to do it. Imagine if all the reporting had been like Derek, or at least, even 50% of what Derek's doing, even 40%. He's a role model for these people, young people coming out. He should be the role model. This is how we should be reporting. He's asking the questions, and those questions need to be asked. And I still don't see any major accountability, and Chippy's still carrying on, and here we are. My own personal story about that 12 to 17-year-old thing is that and I'm pretty sure they don't watch me on RCR, but I have two nieces that struggle with me to this day, because I said that I felt that one of them has 3 children and one of them was in the 12 to 17-year-old bracket just. And the first day she could get the vax for them, she did, for the youngest as well. But I said somewhere on social media that I felt it was child abuse, and they read it. And I didn't know that they even followed me on. They never said they did. And they never even told me until about 2 years afterwards. And that's why they stopped talking to me. But I actually felt that it was child abuse because there wasn't the data set there. There wasn't the science there. I wasn't talking about them specifically, my dear nieces, who I love dearly. I was talking about anyone who rushed their children in to get those vaxes on the basis of no data. And yeah, so that's my own personal story about the 12 to 17-year-old thing. And then they got the second shot, and then, it went from there. So, God, if imagine the media landscape doing its job, wouldn't that be imagine that. It would feel like a different world, wouldn't it?
It would feel like a different world. It would feel like a different world.
Well, people say to me, oh, but Rachel, you've always been lied to by the media. Even, this is what younger people say to me. I say, I don't really know about that. What I know is that they didn't put their own value systems on things. But yeah, maybe back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, well, maybe 90s it wasn't so good, but certainly 70s, 80s, 60s, you felt like you were getting sort of the facts and you could make up your own mind pretty much. I mean, there was always, newspapers that were more one way or the other, and then there was the truth and there was all sorts of different things, but it just felt like a different landscape, eh? And it's got to be the internet, it's got to be social media. And we're so far down the track, I don't know how we get out of this one.
No. Well, and this is the thing. We are down the track. The one part in this article that I wish he had gone into more, but he didn't, was cracks in social cohesion. Now, he popped up a graph, Russian propaganda index, New Zealand versus Australia and New Zealand. Now, he says the source here is Microsoft. So, I mean, instantly my little spider sense is going, yeah, okay. Yeah. Russian propaganda around COVID-19 consumed by New Zealanders increased by over 30% relative to consumption in Australia and New Zealand at the end of 2021. He doesn't actually explain what that propaganda was.
Okay, yep, all right, yep, that's fair point. He needed to go there.
He did need to go there because he opens with cracks in social cohesion amid all this was mis and disinformation, our increasing consumption of it, the upcoming occupation of Parliament, New Zealand's consumption of Russian propaganda about COVID-19 has risen 30% since the start of December 2021 relative to New Zealand and the United States. Now, I can't help but reading into that
Yes.
the likes of us and VFF are the purveyors of the so-called Russian
Yeah, but
disinformation.
explain to me what what
What
Russia's
is it?
disinformation around COVID is. Because
Yes,
what did Russia do? What does he mean by that? Yeah, you're
I
right.
know.
That's a bit of a gap. Yeah,
It is a bit of a
yeah,
now. If he had sort of said around the Russian-Ukraine conflict or something geopolitical, I'd be gone there. But I still, even to this day, don't know what the Russian propaganda is. Was that perpetrating the lab leak out of Wuhan, which is now to be shown is
yeah.
actually likely the case? That
And did
there were
Russia actually get into the vaccinations?
they created their own vaccination.
And how'd that go? Do we
Oh,
know?
who knows? I mean, it's the Russians.
No.
Who would know what would happen?
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, you're
The
right. That's
Chinese
weird.
developed their own vaccine, so did the
Yes.
Russians develop their own vaccine. And from what I understand, neither of them were based on mRNA platforms.
Ah. Oh, from what you understand. Okay, I'm going to
I
look into that a little
understand.
bit more, actually. That's a interesting one. So maybe they realized what was going on and did something differently.
Yeah, indeed. But other than that, I thought another solid piece from Derek. And so again,
Yep. Triple A, stars.
yep, bouquets as
Except for
opposed to
that,
fruit
yeah,
bats.
you're right. Except for that graph, I'm disturbed. I must look at that again because I didn't really notice that.
Yeah, but what I am thrilled about, and I do, again do wonder whether this is a hangover from our friends at the Disinformation Project, because of course that was the form of censorship that was
Yep.
being deployed at that time. If you
Yes.
had an opposing view to anything in the pandemic, those that were in the professions that were controlled by the government were censored via professional threats over your registration. So that's anything medical, even teachers, anything you say in social media. If you were negative, you could potentially lose your registration. So that's how they shut that crew down. And then in the media, they had the Public Interest Journalism Fund to
Yes.
keep everybody
Yeah.
on the straight and narrow. I mean, this is why RCR now exists because of
Exactly.
this. I mean, we're a
Yeah.
product of their need to censor. If the
Yeah. And
censorship
we're both,
wasn't there,
yeah. And you're a trad wife.
yes, it knits, but has long hair
Yeah,
that's
no,
sometimes
exactly.
braided. I know.
Yeah. And preserves and all that. I'm not, obviously, because I don't do any of those things. But yeah, but I'm very fair. And yeah, the trad wife thing was astounding. I mean, that stuff got blown out of the water, but here's a hangover from it in Derek's article. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So, I think, that's so that is definitely worth checking out. And I'm thrilled that he hasn't quite let this go, because I think that there are New Zealanders that are starting to ask questions, and particularly parents too. There are a lot of parents, and we mentioned it before with this young man, with the assassination attempt with Trump. If you're only consuming certain media most of the time, and that media is consistent, and you're actually being propagandized, if you were a mum like your nieces, you probably would be affronted if you were to when you said it was child abuse, because they are consuming a diet of you're being a good mother doing this.
Yes. Yes, I
This
get
is
it.
what a this is what a good
Yeah.
mother does.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really tough. I actually feel for all those mums and dads out there now
Mm,
who have read these stories, who may have had sons or daughters who were affected, who were
yeah.
sick after the vaccine, and most of them took their kids off to doctors, and from what I understand were told things like, oh, it's just anxiety.
Uh-huh. Hmm. I know.
you know
It was
um
a massive, the psyop was incredible. I just hope that they're starting to think to themselves as they're vaccinating their kids between 12 and 17 or whatever, 2 doses, whatever, that they still got COVID, they still got sick,
mm,
didn't work. I mean, it's just bloody logic, isn't it? I mean, you get the
yeah,
vaccination, you still get sick. So what?
yeah, I
Like
know.
yeah, they've never recovered from me saying that, but I didn't say it directly to them, and I certainly wasn't directed. It wasn't really about them, but they took it that way, and then they never told me. I only found out through sort of a third party that that's what had happened, and
Mm.
so Oh well, too bad. I open my mouth, but I'm in the media. That's what I do.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just going to go slightly off piste here for a second. Have you, I know because I know you're a reader, did you read Abigail Shrier's Bad Therapy, a follow up to
Oh
Irreversible
no, no,
Damage?
sorry, no. I thought you were going to tell me about the other one. Yep. No,
Irreversible
I
Damage.
haven't. Yeah.
So I've just reviewed it, and she followed it up after doing Irreversible Damage because she's got 4 children and twins, and as well as a part of that 4. And she'd gone to school in California, and there was an interview that she had to be part of, and the questions in the interview really concerned her. She felt they crossed a line, and from that, the book Bad Therapy was born. And it talks about this need, and it builds off the that parental need that we have to be good parents and do the best for our children, but weaponizes that against us. So we actually unwittingly end up being propagandized into doing what is worse for our children, believing we're doing the right thing. And having read that book and then seeing what happened during the pandemic, particularly around these 12 to 17-year-olds, and I have a tremendous amount of sympathy for these parents. I really do. And if you are listening to this and you are a parent that is into that camp, you know what? We hear you, and it's okay. It's like, I mean, I hope your children are okay and they've moved through it. But you know what? Yeah, you were lied to, and you were
Mhm.
propagandized by the government. And if you're feeling a little bit angry about it, that's okay. You're allowed to feel a little bit angry about it. But just now have your eyes open, because this won't be the first time, and it certainly won't be the last.
No, and I'm probably a bit tough because I don't have children, and I'm a bit tougher than that, so I need to be a bit
Mm.
softer. But yeah, I did feel. I guess I just was in that zone at the time of thinking, come on, people, open your eyes. If the government's telling you this and they're pushing this so hard, what's wrong? And then where's the data set? Where's the data set?
Mm.
At the time I was living with a scientist, and it was part of her DNA and part of mine too, really, to look at the stuff coming out of Israel, actually, because they were so early, and just wasn't stacking up.
Mm.
And so I was a bit harder. So I'm sorry too if you feel offended that I said that you were a child abuser. But I said it, and yeah, so I need to walk that back and be like
Mm.
you, Maree. Peace and love.
Oh yeah. Well, look, we're all our own natures, aren't we? So we
Yeah,
can't.
I
But
don't know
it's
what it's
just
like to be a parent. I don't know what it's like to be a parent because I haven't had kids. I know that people love their children more than anything in the world. I
mm,
see it. Thank God they do, because no one would breed if they didn't. I can only liken it to always trying to do the best for my dog.
yeah. There you go. Hey, now look, I just want to look at some of your writing shotguns that you've done lately, because I rewatched the last 3. And there was sort of actually a bit of a wider theme that I wanted to have a little chew fat around. And the first one I want to kick off with is around in Ireland, around the fuel protests that have been going on, because there's absolutely zippo about that in the New Zealand media. And Ireland is a really interesting case, I think, for us here in New Zealand. Even though the population's about twice the size, they have a similar political dynamic going on in Ireland than what we have here as well, between sort of left-wing ideologies and a lot of sort of woke policy, and a lot of these now coming home to roost. And you had a guy who was a podcaster, a tradie,
Mm.
being a good red-blooded heterosexual woman, very easy on the eye, by the name of John McGrath. And he said something in there, and he was talking about the taxation uh, with the fuel taxes and the frustration felt by the Irish. And he said, "You're asking us to do more with less, while you do less with more." Now, that's a
Mm.
tune and a ditty that could be sung here with our government, regardless of which side they're on, could it not?
Yeah, absolutely. He got real cut through, that guy.
Mm.
Simply because, yeah, he's easy on the eye, but he also is really well respected, just a normal, down to earth guy. And he was saying, "I'm with the truckies all the way, and this is the way to go." And yeah, I mean, and it's happening here. I don't certainly their fuel taxes over there are way higher than ours. But he's right. You get more money and seem to do less with it, and pay consultants all this. Well, we do it here. We pay consultants enormous amounts of money to deliver nothing. Um, so yeah, Ireland is interesting. Are they double the population? I had a feeling that we were still pretty much on par. Maybe
Oh, are
maybe
we? No, we could
immigration.
be actually. Yeah, no, we
Yeah,
could be. We
and
could be
also
on
they're an
Lotte,
island. They're an island, not an Ireland. They're an island.
like
Um,
us. Yeah.
like us. And yeah, they are often interesting in terms of taking the temperature in Ireland about
Mm.
lots of things. And I think in terms of Europe and what's going on there all around, they are, if they carry this on, I think there was something on TVNZ one night and then that was the end of it. We didn't see any more, but it's like protests in Paris and homelessness and Berlin, and you just don't see it. No one talks about these things. But I think Europe's so essentially interesting to us, but Ireland particularly. And what happens over there is going to affect us. I think if Europe falls, which clearly it's not looking good. I mean, it's basically Britain's an Islamic state now. I don't say that lightly. Then we're in big trouble.
So then that ties into your pod on One Nation and the rise and rise of One Nation. I was in Australia in South Australia when their elections were on. And of course, the hot news there wasn't the landslide of Peter Malinauskas again as Premier for the Labor Party. Again, pretty middle of the road kind of guy. What Labor used to be in this country once upon a time ago isn't anymore. Easy on the eye, very personable. He's been touted as a potential leader and replacement for Anthony Albanese, which is at the opposite end of the Labor spectrum. But the big story was the crash of the Liberals, and One Nation just came in, and the attitude of One Nation being strictly a Queensland party, and for it to come into South Australia, which is... they're very proud of the fact that they were never founded on convicts. This is old first ship stuff, very conservative, very old school. Other than the Barossa, actually, with the area where we spent, which is where the Liberal leader is based.
Of course you did. You were over there drinking wine, I bet you.
Yes, I was. I drank a lot of wine,
I knew it. Yep. Good on you.
I drank a lot of wine. Tasted it. Yes, I did. It was very good, actually. I make notes on it all. Anywho, there's another story for another day. The One Nation just, with the exception of Barossa, One Nation picked up, I think, in the end, 4 seats. Wasn't predicted necessarily to pick up any. It got seats in both the upper and the lower house. The media there was stunned.
Yes. Stunned. Yes, I felt I had to do a podcast on it because I was stunned myself, and sort of happy because, they are our New Zealand first, really. They're not as radical as people say. I find Pauline Hanson, I was taught early on to hate her, of course, by the media. Now I find everything that comes out of her mouth bloody brilliant. I don't think there's anything wrong with her. She's a proud Australian. She... does these antics like that one in Parliament where she wore the burqa, which I thought was astoundingly effective. But anyway, they did so well. I think Australia's got something to really think about. Their elections are going to be very interesting, and I think that people have had enough of particularly immigration. And obviously it's different from Europe because people don't come in illegally as such. But it's and Anthony Albanese is just being booed everywhere he goes, and Jews don't feel good there, and it's just the whole thing's going to be very interesting to watch. So that's why I did that. I felt that it had to be talked about because the cut through was astoundingly high.
Yeah, very high, very high. And there is definitely a feeling of unease, and of course we're seeing this tremendous drain of New Zealand citizens across to Australia.
And if I was younger, I'd have to think about that myself.
Look, I have a brother who packed up, him and his wife packed up sticks. It'll be, they left it, they've been over there about 8 or 9 months now into Queensland. And there is a ton of Kiwis there. There's still a lot of work. What they're finding is they're picking the work up, because if there is an opportunity to get work, he's in the trades, he is actually able to get the work there. They still are also having the immigration like we're having here. And part of the problem also that they're suffering from is they've got a high number of people that just simply aren't working as well, which in some, there's a lot of these jobs that still need to be done. Now, One Nation does tap into a lot of that, and it was interesting around populism. So particularly with One Nation, they get that epithet thrown around: right-wing populism, right-wing populism. And the
Uh-huh.
definition is nationalistic, anti-immigration rather, protection of national identity and pride is considered
Mm,
right-wing populism.
uh-huh.
I'm, kind of not seeing the problem with that, but there you go. And then, so then you would look that as a nationalistic, right?
Uh-huh.
Meanwhile, left wing populism, which you never ever hear referred to, left wing populism is generally based around economic distribution, particularly equity, working class versus capitalism, and large corporations, very much a globalist mentality, particularly around governance. And I look at that and I'm thinking, I'm sure that idea has floated itself around in the 20th century. What was it called again?
Um,
Communism.
um, yeah, and anyway, working class, give me a break. They don't
I
care
know.
about working
No,
class. I
couldn't give a
mean,
rat's.
the working class thing is where Winston's placed. It's where nationalism is. Yeah, nationalism's got a bad rap because Nazi Party nationalism, but
Mm.
this is different. Nationalism, in the true sense of the word, is actually, I say, bring back nationalism.
Mm.
And I think with the demographics in New Zealand changing so dramatically and drastically very quickly, and it's about to be in 2 years, I think I read the other day, there's going to be less European Pākehā New Zealanders in Auckland than
Auckland.
every
Mm.
every every other Asian, I think. So there's a lot to get our head around. And yeah, I mean, I there's something about keeping an identity of a nation despite the demographics changing, that's quite important. I'm not saying we shouldn't have immigration. We should have a certain type of immigration, a tighter uh, immigration, and we should be careful about what countries we're letting in. But I really believe that there's an identity in a nation that's very important to obviously privileged white people like me, is what they would say. But
Mm.
actually, it's what keeps the place pumping, is having that
Mm.
identity, that difference. And it seems the globalist order is very much about making us all the same.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And I still can't figure that one out.
No.
Why?
Well,
Why?
yeah, but I think if you actually look at, there's that long, long sort of Fabian society-esque
Mm,
desire to have, this form of communism that
mm,
you have this uber elite, and then it's a great form of control, and that this is a long game for them. The
yeah.
the other, because I mean, of course, in terms of left-wing nationalism, I mean, the big, great international example of late has been Zohan Mandami in New York. He'd be a
Mm,
classic example of that. But we have that representation here in the form of the
yeah.
Green Party, in the form of
Mm,
the Labour Party, and then we have the tribalists, which is the
mm-hmm.
form of Te Pāti Māori. And this is what I wonder is going to happen, is as that tipping point is reached of non-New Zealand immigrants, particularly from South Asia mostly, into New Zealand, and they then surpass Māori identification. I believe that the whole tribalist Māori supremacy movement will be on steroids, because all of a
Yeah.
sudden they'll realise that they're being heavily outnumbered,
Mm-hmm.
outsmarted, outworked, and outfinanced by a group of people that just don't give a rat's about that. They've come to another country to go on and get on. And I think that they'll start getting
And they're
very
starting. I mean,
threatened.
yeah,
Mm.
and they're starting because that haka that was done by the ex president of the Te Pāti Māori, where he took the piss out of Asians, out of Pa Pāgia from ACT.
Pamir, yeah, Pajit
Yeah, and
Pamir,
then
yeah.
and then of course Shane Jones and the butter chicken tsunami, he gets it. I mean, Maori for me should have been onto this 10, 15 years ago.
Mm.
They're going to be usurped by, taken over by, other cultures. And so, yeah, that's going to bring a whole nother dynamic for everybody. So I think we're getting to this election is going to be very interesting. I think it's the next one, though, that's going to be the most fascinating. But my fear is, of course, if we're not careful, we'll end up Labour, Greens to Party Maori, and
I
then I
know.
think I don't care how old I am, I'll just move to Tasmania.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is
That
something
wouldn't be
it is.
good.
No, and it is. I mean, I know that this is an issue that, it's been talked about in our household as well. And I'm just so cycling back to our friend Derek. He then followed up, was it yes, or is it even today as we record this, another article around population yesterday. And he's got some net migration figures in there. I mean, this is the reality: 22, 23, 24. More New Zealand citizens left the country than arrived. We had a net migration of non-New Zealand citizens, which spiked in 2023, pulled back in 24, and that is the change of government, the tightening up of those immigration criteria. But so the spigot was really turned on 23. They've pulled it back in 24, but certainly not beyond the numbers. When you look at the numbers from 27 up to 19 before the pandemic, it's taken it back to those numbers. Those numbers are still quite high. Now, he's gone and referred to this population study done by Professor Paul Spoonley and Gluckman around the state of population in New Zealand. And the one thing he's just drilled down, there's a lot of numbers there. It's been highlighted. He's not applied any emotional factor over this. But the one thing is fewer births as population ages. We are in a birth gap. We've interviewed Stephen Shaw here on RCR around it. We're not having enough kids. We're trying to fill the gap by importing people in. All the nations we're importing people in, they've got birth gaps too. They just happen to have lots of extra people. But then you actually look at that dynamic in terms of what does your national identity mean in the context, modern context. Are we dealing with those that govern us that actually want that to change? Or are we in a place that we got to try and encourage those who are here in New Zealand that if you believe, I mean, what is the New Zealand experiment is what I'm trying to ask. They're saying Derek is still saying very firmly diversity is our strength. My question is it?
Is it? That's right. I don't know that well, he says here, I'm just reading this too. He quotes Gluckman. I don't have a lot of respect for Gluckman, I see, because of his time with Jacinda. And I don't have a lot of respect for Paul Spoonley for a number of reasons, but that's beside the point. I guess they know some of their stuff. I don't know why Gluckman's there necessarily, but Paul Spoonley knows. They say, he quotes Gluckman here, you can't look at this through the traditional political lens of turning on migration tap here, turning it off here, what the superannuation age is or not, making xenophobic comments, as some political parties tend to make from time to time to drive populist vote appeal, he said, declining to name the parties. That was sensible. But yeah, you get the drift there. But I actually, and I get the long-term strategy that he thinks needs to be set up, but basically the article told me that it's a foregone conclusion, and yes, and we need to plan for it. I don't think it should be a foregone conclusion. I think that if we'd thought about this earlier and done it differently, we wouldn't have ethnicities in New Zealand that don't match our own in many ways. It's not to say that I dislike any particular ethnic group, but en masse, it does something to our national sense. But I will say I'm an Islamophobe, probably. I'm not very happy about my immigration from with Muslims, because I think we're going to have our own Bondi Beach in no time at all. But that's not the point. That's another conversation. So you're right. There's a different way of doing it, and there is conversations to be had where this isn't just a fait accompli. And I think people should start breeding. Get on with it. I didn't do my bit. You did your bit. But, then we get into the deeper issues of why is it that women feel that it's beneath them to change nappies or be a mother anymore? Because a lot of women feel that. They've been taught through the media, again, through every possible dynamic we see in society, that girls can do anything, which of course they can. It's a choice. But motherhood's still a choice too. And to be constantly bombarded with messages around it being beneath women, when actually that's that's one of the things about being a girl, is that you can actually breed. Men can't do it, even if they tell us they can. So I think being a mother is something that's been, denigrated for far too long, and that's another aspect to this. So we're not reproducing at the rate that we should be.
Mm. And and it is almost too late. It was quite
Yes,
interesting when they talked about the changes in terms of population and what that would mean. So at the moment, for example, there's talk like within the education sector that there isn't enough teachers, there isn't enough space, particularly with new immigration, floods of immigration coming in. That's a problem for right now, but that's not always going to be the problem. And they've actually moved those numbers out, and they're looking at the numbers, and I'm just trying to find it. And I've probably gone past it. They did look at the numbers in terms of things like education will start dropping.
mm,
You're not going to have,
mm,
are you going to have more people retiring, less people in the workforce? And what you've got to remember is that people in the workforce, that's the tax farm. It's the
yes,
productive people working that are paying
yes,
taxes that are funding the government. Now, when you've got governments, regardless of who they are, to again quote John McGrath, asking us to do more with less while they do less with more, well, they're going to have to get out of that habit real quick, because as things change, there
yeah.
are not going to be the.
There it is. The labour force is forecast to shrink by an average of 4,800 people per year from 2045. By then, Business New Zealand predicts a labour shortage of 250,000 people. And then, interestingly, it says efforts to reverse fertility trends overseas have failed, as the change is mostly due to a shift in social norms. New Zealand will almost certainly follow comparable countries in having more deaths than births. Yeah. And then Spoonley goes on to say, of course, at that point, immigration becomes super important, quite apart from providing labour and skills and talent. Yeah, yeah. Well, we've left it too late, probably.
Mm,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, and so
Mm.
that is something that is, of a huge concern. Like whenever, and I one of the things I've noticed, particularly post-pandemic, just now I've just started noticing more people out, young people out with baby carriages and stuff, it's almost like the stopped. You just didn't see it for the longest time. I have to admit, whenever I've spoken to anyone, particularly if they're in their 20s and they're having kids, to me, that I'm like, yes, this is so good. And it is that denigration in of the family.
Yep.
It's almost
Just
like the traditional family has been shown to be something that is not good, is almost something to be railed against. And yet, when you look at the immigration coming in from those Asian countries, particularly India and particularly places like the Philippines, where traditional family values are exceptionally strong and often around a strong religious centre, whether that be Hinduism or Catholicism or the like, I just find it mind blowing that from a Western perspective, being in a relationship with two parents and actually raising a family is seen as something not a positive thing to do by a great number of young people. And I don't know whether that is psychological or economic, or have the younger ones today become so programmed to have everything that they want when they want it all of the time to a standard to which they've become accustomed to. I'm not sure.
I think it's an overriding narrative that we've been living with now for 30 years. And
Yeah.
that narrative is go to work, women. Um, Pretty much two parents do need to work, unfortunately, in the society that we're in. But the narrative is this is not the way forward if you want to have a fulfilling life. Well, I can tell you, I know a lot of women that have never had children. I'm one of them. I'm not so much in this state myself, but I've watched a lot of them feeling very isolated as they age. They're not going to have children look after them. Um, I have that feeling sometimes. I think, did I make a mistake? That's not to say all children look after their parents, but there's something about the extended family and grandchildren and the whole bit
Mm.
that it makes life more fulfilling. And I don't think there's much doubt about that. And I hope it makes a comeback, because it really does need to. And that's not a religious view, although, of course, it fits into that. But there's something lacking. And
Yeah.
there's a whole couple of generations in there. Gen X's are a lot of it too, who have just bypassed all of that, thinking they were going to have
Mm.
more money, have a more fulfilling life. I don't think a lot of them
Mm.
realised it would be quite so isolating.
No, particularly that first wave of Gen Xers that, that thought, oh, this is quite liberating. You and I have actually, I think, talked about before the Louise Perry book, The Case Against the Sexual Revolution. She touched on that in that book. So that's a book that's not anti-women, but it's actually telling some very sobering truths about in our misguided belief that we can have everything. We're actually cutting ourselves off from the things that make us most uniquely feminine and
we're
powerful as women.
Yes. Absolutely. And we become so not breeding, not having a family, not having that love and stability has made people so self-involved that it's quite scary.
Yeah, it is. The last thing I want to talk about this morning is the Helen Clark Foundation. I mean, I know that
I really wanted to go to Amber Bohanna.
Oh, yes, I completely forgot about Amber. Let's do Amber.
Helen, I can't be bothered with Helen Clark. Let's not talk about that old
Okay, let's go to Amber. Let's go to
Amber because Amber went ambling. I don't know where Amber is. I hope Amber's okay. Amber's probably Anthony, but or something, or Andrew, but he calls himself Amber Bohanna, and he was in Karori. He's gone missing. I don't know if he's been found, and clearly he's got a bit of facial hair and a moustache there, and he's decided he's a girl, and he poses and tilts his head just so, but he's gone walkabout. And here we are with our media lying to us again. She this, she that. How does that help Andrew, or whatever his name is, Amber, come home? If everyone thinks they're looking for a woman who's obviously just a man in a dress. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anybody. It's actually cruel.
And everything aside, Amber's family must be beside themselves.
Yes.
Because they've gone missing. So this is a missing person. And I agree with you. I think you need to be accurate. People need to know. And also too, and Amber Bless was the treasurer of Inside Out, if I got that correct.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh,
I don't know if it still is, but was. So then therefore, if one can draw a bow, and this is an assumption on my part, that Amber will be quite steeped in the ideology of trans and gender ideology. Now, the difficulty, yes, they talk about, particularly within that group, they talk about the violence and the safety and the concerns that they have as a community. And you know what? The reality of it is that if you're a man that engages in fetishistic behaviour, you're putting yourself out there with a bit of a target to a certain sector of society. And so the answer to that is, yeah, you probably are more at risk, which then means that if Amber has gone missing, leading the lifestyle to which Amber has chosen to live, and you do you, boo, good as gold, but you need to report accurately that there is actually potentially another layer there, that, Amber could be missing due to the lifestyle in which Amber has chosen to live. And none of that has been mentioned.
Yeah. None of it. Oh, no, because trans is God. Also, I mean, we know that men pretending to be women, it's fetishistic, and that's a big part of it. But it's also, there's Inside Out's full of mental health issues. I mean, these whole groups exist for mental health retardations. That's a horrible word, but it's a word. Why else do they do the things they do if there's not something wrong mentally? In my opinion, I mean, you see it all the time with trans; they're just not mentally well. So no one's doing anybody any favors by misreporting the sex of that missing person, and the sex of that missing person is not gender. The sex of that missing person is 100% male. And I got no truck with any of that. I despise it when they do that. I despise it, and I think it's almost like they're laughing at us and taking the piss out of us. We know that it's a man because we saw the photo. So Amber Bohanna, you better come home. But who knows?
Yeah, and I just, again, Amber's family's probably beside themselves.
Absolutely.
But again, trust. It's cycling it all the way back to trust in the media, which we talked about to begin with. It's when you know something with your own eyes, you know the truth, you're seeing it, you're looking at it, you know Amber's a man, and the media reportage, even not saying, Amber, whilst identifying as a trans woman, is a biological man, I would have even accepted if that was in there. But that even wasn't there. It was she, this, her, that. I mean, any
Yeah,
normal living, breathing person would have looked at that and thought, what?
yeah. Well, we see it all the time. 1984, here we are.
Hmm. Yeah,
You know, we see it all the
absolutely.
time, and the media just doesn't care. They just think it's almost like a whip to it's a something to whip us with. It's a piss take in some ways. I really believe that they're laughing, and it doesn't do anybody any favors, and it doesn't do the missing person any favors either. Because when you strip it all back, if he's lying in a gully somewhere, and and he's fending for himself, God knows where he is. He's a man. He'll revert to his man ways, and he might survive it, or he might not. But if you've come across a man in a gully that might have a shred of a lacy top on, it's probably amber.
Mm,
Yeah. So
yeah.
it's doing nobody any favors at all.
No, no. And this is, I guess, one of the things is having more honesty in media. And it's, I mean, there's little glimmers there, but then, yeah, you have situations like the Amber, and you think to yourself, oh, good grief, you take one step forward and you're going two steps back sometimes.
That's right. I like the whole world to be a little bit more honest all round, but yeah, certainly the media's got an opportunity to lead the way.
Mm, indeed. Indeed. Right. Well, we've chewed through our time nice and quick on that. I hope you guys have enjoyed this today. If you've got any comments at all about our Media Matters today, 2057 is the text, inbox@rcr.media is the email. It's been fun, Rachel. I've enjoyed
Yeah, good.
this.
Always good to talk to you.
Yeah, and we've covered a lot of ground. And make sure too that if you want to check out any of the work that Rachel is doing, Riding Shotgun is where you will find her. It drops most Fridays. It's one of the things that I look forward to at the end of the week. Have you got any inklings? I know it's early for you. Any inklings of where you're going this week?
Oh, it's early, but it's due tomorrow, so I better get an inkling. No, I can't possibly say. I'm going to the beach shortly to walk my dog, and that's where might find an inkling.
There you go. I know the feeling. Kiwi Farm has those inklings all the time as well.
Yes,
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 quite often the kernel will appear and 20 minutes later there is the
yeah.
farm. So I can
It can happen
understand
very
that.
quickly. It can
It
happen
can
very
happen
quickly,
very
or it can happen
quickly.
very slowly. But usually, I just go boom, and there it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, on that, thank you very much for joining us for Media Matters again, and we will do it all again next week. Take care.